right. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. All right, just a few things at the top, and then happy to take your questions. Secretary Austin returned yesterday from a busy week of travel. A summary of highlights includes productive working meetings with his NATO counterparts in Brussels and a first ever G7 defense ministerial in Naples. A historic visit to Kyiv in which the secretary underscored the United States' unwavering commitment to supporting the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom, and a papal engagement at the Vatican in Rome in which the Secretary and His Holiness Pope Francis discussed shared concerns over global security challenges and the importance of promoting peace and stability in conflict-affected regions. Turning to the Middle East, yesterday Secretary Austin spoke by phone to Minister Gallant to discuss Israel's operations in Lebanon and the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Secretary Austin expressed his condolences for the IDF brigade commander killed in the northern Gaza Strip over the weekend and welcomed the movement of humanitarian assistance through the Erez crossing. He urged that Israel take all necessary steps to address the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza and to work to seize opportunities for the release of hostages and a ceasefire presented by the death of Sinwar. The Secretary also expressed his deep concern over reports of strikes against the Lebanese armed forces and emphasized the importance of taking all necessary measures to ensure the safety and security of the Lebanese armed forces and UNIFIL forces. And earlier today, U.S. forces participated in an Iraqi-led operation against ISIS fighters in the Anbar province in Iraq. Our assessment of the operation: no U.S. personnel injured in the operation. We'll have more info to share soon. Additionally, I have an update on the 2 service members wounded in a partnered raid with Iraqi security forces on October 22nd. Earlier this week, the ISF, enabled by personnel from CJTF-OIR, conducted strikes and follow-on raids on multiple ISIS locations in central Iraq, targeting several senior ISIS leaders and killing at least 7 ISIS operatives. During the operation, 2 U.S. military personnel were wounded by an explosion while assisting Iraqi forces with site exploitation. While both service members sustained serious injuries, they are in stable condition and are currently en route to Walter Reed Medical Center for follow-on care. Additionally, we recently learned a 3rd service member is being assessed for potential TBI. And as you know, TBI numbers can fluctuate over time. All are in stable condition and receiving the care that they need. We will provide more information about the outcome of the raids and the status of these service members as it becomes available. And finally, today, President Biden issued the first ever National Security Memorandum on Artificial Intelligence. The department strongly supports the leadership of the President and the Vice President to prioritize the adoption of artificial intelligence in national security. The department worked with the NSC and our interagency partners to align on the scope of work outlined in the NSM and to begin preparations on implementing the guidance directed to the DoD. To keep pace with the rapid maturity of this technology, we intend to leverage existing efforts like Replicator and our experimentation efforts like the Global Information Dominance Experiment and the Rapid Defense Experimentation Reserve. The Chief Digital and AI Office is working closely with industry, the AI Safety Institute of the Department of Commerce, and the military departments to accelerate ethical and responsible use of AI. To support international partnership and building off of the political declaration on responsible military use of AI and autonomy, next week, the department is hosting a 3-day Responsible AI in Defense Forum with 16 nations in the AI Partnership for Defense, NATO partners, and key partners in the industry. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Lita.
Thanks, Sabrina. 2 things. One, just on this latest Iraq operation, U.S. forces were with, again, Iraqi forces. Was this a similar raid to what happened the other day? Is it that type of thing? And do you have any details on ISIS killed or anything like that?
So still waiting for a final assessment of the raid. Similar in that this raid was like the one on October 22nd and going after ISIS fighters in Iraq. This was an Iraqi-led operation, so U.S. forces participated, but it was an Iraqi-led operation. Hopefully we'll have more to share soon. But as I mentioned, I'm not, to my knowledge, no U.S. personnel injured.
And then secondly, on North Korean forces in Russia, do you have any updates on whether or not you've seen any movement of North Korean forces out of Vladivostok? Are they moving across Russia? Are they moving into near Ukraine? Anything on that?
Sure. I don't have any updates other than what the secretary spoke to yesterday, that we have seen evidence of DPRK troops that have gone into Russia. I think you heard yesterday it's likely around 3,000. What exactly they're doing has yet to be seen, but it's something that we certainly are going to continue to monitor. Just to emphasize the point that the secretary made yesterday, this really highlights Russia's desperation. Tin cupping to the DPRK, to Iran, enticing DPRK soldiers, if they were to ever enter the fight. I think that shows that Putin has failed in his strategic objectives on the battlefield, but we're going to keep monitoring, and we'll keep you updated.
Right, but the White House made it clear they're training, there's efforts to train them. You, at this point, don't know or have not seen any evidence that they have moved out of the training to other locations?
Nothing so far. What exactly they'll be doing from their training in Russia still remains to be seen. Right. Yeah. Natasha.
Thanks, Sabrina. So it seems like there's been pretty significant uptick in the number of these raids against ISIS figures, the Iraqi-led raids. And you keep saying that they are Iraqi-led, but service members keep getting injured, and we had heard, that part of the problem is booby traps, but that usually affects kind of the first person through the door. So if these are Iraqi-led, why do these U.S. service members keep getting injured? And can you explain, I guess, in more detail what their actual role is in these raids?
For some of the raids, I'd have to get you more information. I'd refer you to CENTCOM and exactly for each raid what U.S. personnel are assisting with, as each raid is slightly different. In terms of injuries, these are still, even though they're Iraqi-led, they are still U.S. personnel that are putting themselves, in an area where there's dangerous activity. Certainly with the raid that happened earlier this week, we saw 2 service members experience serious injuries, but thankfully they're in stable condition. I think we'll have more to share on each raid. I know Central Command is working to get you more information, so I just don't have more on the one that was also conducted earlier today.
Okay, and then on Gaza, Secretary Austin spoke with Gallant yesterday. Obviously, there was a 30-day deadline that was given to see whether more aid was going to go into northern Gaza. Has there been progress made on that front?
Well, as you heard me mention in the topper, we have seen more aid move through the Erez crossing. It's not enough. I think what the secretary has said also echoes what Secretary Blinken said in the region. The humanitarian situation is dire in Gaza, and particularly in northern Gaza, we do need to see more humanitarian aid getting in. That's something that comes up consistently on his calls with Minister Gallant, and it's something that, again, came up yesterday. We are seeing some progress, but we want to see more. So we're going to keep pushing on that issue, but we are seeing some progress getting in when it comes to humanitarian aid. Joseph.
Thanks. Also on the Secretary's call yesterday with Gallant, you mentioned that he expressed deep concern about the targeting of UNIFIL troops and Lebanese soldiers. Less than 24 hours later, another 3 Lebanese soldiers were killed this morning in an Israeli attack. It's not the first time the Secretary has brought it up. So, and these are troops that are backed and an institution that's funded in large part by the U.S. So, what's the message that the Secretary is getting when he raises these concerns? It's either Gallant and maybe the Israelis don't take it seriously, or the Secretary's message may not be getting across. So what's your response?
Without going into too many more details of the call, and without speaking for Minister Gallant, I think they certainly hear our concerns and they understand them. They understand the need to, conduct operations that take into account whether it be Lebanese armed forces or UNIFIL operating in that area. They do need to ensure the safety and security of Lebanese armed forces and UNIFIL forces, and that's something that has been reiterated. They do understand that, and we're going to keep making it clear and keep pressing for details when we need more information. But I just don't have more to provide from the conversation.
Quick,
Sure.
two more. One, have you guys seen any indications, because the U.S. has helped Israel with certain ISR, have you seen any indications that there's Iranian personnel inside of Lebanon operating?
I don't have anything to provide on that.
And final point, some reports indicate that Israel may have delayed its response, or this, what everybody's expecting is a response to Iran because of the leak. Do you have any, can you confirm that one, and do you have any updates on this leak?
I don't have any updates. It's something that, I don't have more to provide than what General Ryder provided on Tuesday, which is that the FBI is the lead agency when it comes to the leak of classified documents, and that, DOD is feeding into that investigation. It's in the early days, so we have to let the investigation take its course. In terms of any impact to Israeli operations or, when Israel chooses to respond, that's not really something I can speak to. I'd refer you to the Israelis to speak to that. Janie.
Thank you, Sabrina. On North Korea, excuse me, Secretary Austin said he had confirmed the evidence of North Korean troops in Russia. However, he said he could not yet confirm the role of the North Korean troops, right? But last month, North Korea shipped 20,000 boxes of war supplies and stockpiles to Russia in advance. Ultimately, it is clear that the North Korean military will play a role in intervening in Russia's war in Ukraine by sending troops. How do you assess this?
Yes, Janie, there's a clear relationship and a clear link between the DPRK and Russia. And we've seen that over the course of the war and as it's developed. The DPRK, Iran, are providing military assistance and support as Russia engages in this illegal war and has been for 2.5 years. I think what's really important here, and to take a step back, is Vladimir Putin has become so desperate that he is now willing and soliciting, potentially support from the DPRK to put their personnel on the battlefield. And we're talking about, over 500,000 casualties that, Russia has experienced on the battlefield. So if the DPRK soldiers enter into combat, they would be co-belligerents, and that is a very serious issue. But it's not it's something that we're, aware of this relationship. We're going to continue to monitor. And I think, again, the important point here is that it really highlights Putin's desperation because he has really failed to meet his strategic objectives on the battlefield.
When North Korean Kim Jong-un inspected the ICBM unit and ordered the nuclear readiness, can you predict that North Korea and Russia are likely to use nuclear weapons at a critical time?
I don't have anything on what you're referring to, if you're referring to any testing, but we've seen that saber rattling, dangerous rhetoric coming out of Russia. It's something that we certainly take seriously, but nothing's changed in terms of our nuclear posture. Step.
Thank you. I have several on Ukraine, and then we'll be on the AI.
Sure.
So North Korean troops, if they are used in a fight against Ukraine, would that prompt a stronger response from the United States, like increased military aid packages, or maybe lifting restrictions on longer-range weapons or something else?
Well, what I would say is, without getting into the hypotheticals, in terms of increased assistance, I mean, just within the last week, we've rolled out nearly $800 million in aid and presidential drawdown packages to Ukraine. That is significant, and that's just within the last week. The commitment to Ukraine hasn't changed. Our policy on long-range strikes and being able to use something like ATACMS has not changed. I think you've seen time and again this administration's commitment to Ukraine for as long as it takes. But it's not just us, it's allies and partners. And one of the things that was discussed at, the NATO Defense Ministerial, at the inaugural G7 Ministerial, there is wide support for Ukraine within the international community, not just within Europe. So it's not just the United States supporting Ukraine. It is a global effort. But again, just can't get down into the road of hypotheticals.
We saw House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner. He yesterday said that if North Korean troops do attack Ukraine, the U.S. should take direct military action against them. Is it something that might be possible?
Look, I'm, again, just not going to get into hypotheticals. Right now, what we are doing as the Department of Defense is supporting Ukraine with its military objectives, which is helping with security assistance. The secretary had the opportunity to travel to Kyiv. He met with President Zelensky. His counterpart, Minister Umerov, was given presentations by other parts of the Ukrainian military to understand how their, military objectives on the battlefield fit with their strategic objectives and their long-term goals. Again, I can't go down the road of hypotheticals because right now, what exactly DPRK troops are doing in Russia still remains to be seen. But I think, again, it highlights that Putin has really failed to meet his strategic objectives. Sure.
AI. Could you tell more about how the Pentagon is going to implement the president's memorandum to adopt the AI technology? Where is AI going to be adopted? How soon?
So everything will be done through the CDAO. Again, the NSM was just rolled out today, so there'll be more to come. And as I mentioned in the top, we are having a summit. I believe it's in the first part of next week, so there'll be more to share after that. Noah.
Given that Secretary Austin has spoken to his Russian counterpart directly in the past, I'm wondering if the presence of North Korean troops there now, as a new development, is something he could raise in a direct call.
If there was a direct call to read out, I would certainly do that. But right now, I don't have any calls to read out. I think we have made our concerns publicly pretty well known about this latest development, but I just don't have anything more to share on that.
Could you characterize the state of communication between defense talks with U.S. and Russia right now?
I don't have anything to read out other than that last call that took place. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was over the summer.
Another quick one. The DIA put out a report yesterday on nuclear issues, specifically assessing adversaries like Russia and China. It listed motives for China's nuclear buildup that haven't necessarily been talked about before, at least in such a report. Among them are putting more capabilities behind long-held strategic concepts, and another is parity with the U.S. in terms of its nuclear buildup. Is that reflecting increased clarity for the U.S. on something that they traditionally struggle to get the Chinese to talk about publicly?
Yeah, Noah, I don't have more to share on the report. I think I'd let the report's findings speak to itself, but just don't have more to add from here. Yeah, in the back.
Thank you, Sabrina. As you mentioned a while ago, that the aid is still not enough that's going into Gaza. So that does not mean the Israeli didn't yet meet the 30 days letter that's been sent by the Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken, and the clock is ticking for the 30 days. So are you considering for something like hold some munitions to Israel? What you are planning if the Israel will not meet this letter?
Well, what I mentioned in the top was that we are seeing more aid come through the Erez crossing, and that is a good sign, and we want to see more. It's not enough. More needs to be done, and we know that the situation, particularly in the north, is getting worse. But we have seen some more aid get in. Again, not going to speak to the letter, but I can tell you that this is an issue that the Secretary has raised with Mr. Gallant, and of course you saw Secretary Blinken in the region directly raising it as well.
I have another one, please.
Sure.
Today there is Secretary Blinken already announced that U.S. and Israeli negotiators are set to travel to Doha in the coming days to attempt to reach a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza. I know the DoD, they are not involved directly in this negotiation, but this time, how much do you have confidence maybe will be like some progress will happen in Doha? We have listened from the White House. This is a good chance for that to have some progress in this negotiation. What about the DoD?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. Look, I think you've seen a commitment from this administration to continue to engage parties to come to the table to reach a ceasefire. As you just mentioned before, the humanitarian situation is dire. So we know that a ceasefire would be the best way to get, whether it be food, water, humanitarian needs in, as well as medical treatment into Gaza. We also know that, Israel has been effective in really dismantling Hamas in Gaza. Hamas, cannot conduct the type of attack that they conducted on October 7th today. They just don't. They have been dismantled into a way where they are not that same organization pre-October 7th. We have also urged, Sinwar's death is an opportunity. Let's use it. So again, you're seeing Secretary Blinken in the region. I don't have more to add to his comments, but we certainly haven't given up hope. It's something that this administration is going to continue to push for. Yeah.
Sorry, 2 questions. The first is that Harry S. Truman, which is supposedly on its way to the Middle East, is currently in the North Sea doing some stuff with the Arctic. So I was wondering what kind of message is that sending that carrier strike group can take an extended period to go up to the high north instead of going straight to the CENTCOM area of response. And then second, the DoD IG report came out today about naval SEAL training following the death of Kyle Mullen, highlighting that the DoD nor the Navy SEALs have policies about sleep deprivation and PED testing. So I was wondering if the DoD is planning to create any policies as a result of that investigation.
Let me take the question on the investigation. In terms of the Harry S. Truman, first, let me remind you that in the CENTCOM AOR, we still have the Lincoln operating. The Truman, as I know folks track where our ships are moving, was always scheduled to do this exercise. It was a planned exercise. She is in the EUCOM AOR continuing to operate. I don't have any announcements to make on her movements other than that she could, continue to operate within the EUCOM AOR, which includes the Mediterranean. But it's important to remember that we've not only have the ABE operating in the CENTCOM AOR, we've augmented our airframes as well. And so, we have, a lot of air power in the region. And of course, as you're tracking, we also have the THAAD battery that's in Israel. So, for more on the Harry S. Truman, I'd refer you to, EUCOM or the Navy to speak to her movements, but I don't have anything to announce today.
Just to quickly follow up, is there any concern about the straining of carrier strike groups since you're bringing in some from the Indo-Pacific area now? It seems that all of our East Coast ones are pretty much going deployment to deployment with extensions. So is there any concern from the DoD that we're straining our sailors, we're straining our ships past what they can do?
Look, one of the Secretary's priorities is taking care of our people. It's something that he is always concerned about if we are putting a strain on our apparatus or, whether or any service. But these are decisions made